Most Canadian seniors assume this decision basically makes itself. You turn 65, you apply for your OAS, and the money starts coming in. Simple, done. But there's a calculation buried inside this choice that the government never walks you through, and depending on your situation, getting it wrong could cost you tens of thousands of dollars over the course of your retirement. Today we're going to do the math that almost nobody does. We're talking about old age security. When to take it, when to wait, what the real break-even numbers look like, and something called the GIS trap that could be one of the most financially damaging mistakes a low-income senior can make. If you receive or are approaching OAS, CPP, or the Guaranteed Income Supplement, this video was made for you. I want to be upfront with you from the start. This isn't a video with one simple answer, because the right timing for OAS genuinely depends on who you are, what your income looks like, and how long you're likely to live. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear way to think about your own situation. And later on, I'll walk you through a decision framework that pulls it all together into something you can actually use. Let's start with the basics, so we're all on the same page. Old age security is a monthly payment from the federal government. Unlike CPP, you don't earn it based on how many years you worked or how much you contributed. OAS is based on how long you've lived in Canada. Most people become eligible at age 65. The key thing to understand is that you have a choice. You can start receiving it at 65, or you can delay it any amount up to age 70. Here's why that delay matters. For every single month you wait past your 65th birthday, your permanent OAS payment increases by 0.6%. Wait a full 5 years to age 70, and your monthly payment is 36% higher for the rest of your life. That's not a temporary bonus. That's a permanent increase that gets indexed to inflation every single quarter until the day you pass. In 2026, the maximum monthly OAS payment at age 65 is around $743. If you wait until age 70, that becomes roughly $1,010 per month. That's a difference of about $267 every single month, or over $3,200 every year. And unlike stock market returns, that income never goes down. But here's where it gets interesting, because the obvious question is, if delaying gives you more money, why wouldn't everyone do it? And the honest answer is, for some people, they absolutely should not. In fact, for a specific group of seniors, delaying OAS is one of the worst financial decisions they could make. We'll get to that in a few minutes. First, let's do the math that almost no one actually sits down to calculate. Think about a woman named Margaret. She's 65, healthy, and trying to decide whether to take OAS now or wait. If she starts at 65, she collects about $743 a month right away. If she waits until 70, she gives up 60 months of payments, which adds up to roughly $44,000 to $46,000 in total income she never received. But starting at 70, she gets about $267 more every single month. So how long does it take her to catch up and actually come out ahead? If she waits until 70, she needs enough extra months at the higher rate to make up for all those payments she skipped. In purely nominal terms, without factoring in investment returns or inflation adjustments, the break-even point lands at around age 83 to 84. If Margaret lives past 84, deferring was the smarter financial choice. If she doesn't reach that age, taking OAS at 65 would have put more total money in her pocket. Now, most people who hear that number think, well, the average Canadian doesn't live that long. But here's something important. The relevant question isn't what the average Canadian's lifespan is at birth. The question is how long someone who is already 65 and in reasonable health is likely to live. And the answer might surprise you. A Canadian woman who reaches age 65 in good health today has an average remaining life expectancy of over 22 years. That puts her to about age 87. For a man in good health, it's closer to 85. That means for a healthy senior at 65, living past the break-even point isn't the exception. It's actually the expectation. But there's something else nobody talks about, and it makes the case for deferral even stronger for certain retirees. When you turn 75, the federal government permanently increases your OAS by an additional 10%. Now that might sound modest on its own, but here's the part that matters. If you deferred your OAS to age 70 and you're already receiving the enhanced 36% higher payment, the 10% boost at 75 applies to your larger amount. It's not 10% of the original baseline. It's 10% on top of everything you've already built up. For someone who started OAS at 65, that 10% bump at 75 takes their payment from $743 to about $817 a month. For someone who deferred to 70, that same 10% at age 75 pushes their payment from $1,010 to roughly $1,111 per month. The gap between the two strategies widens permanently, and in a long retirement, that difference adds up to tens of thousands of dollars. Now, before I explain the one strategy that combines deferral with a powerful registered account approach, I want to talk about something that affects a very specific group of Canadian seniors, and this is critical. If you or someone you know has a lower income in retirement, please pay close attention to this next part. There's a benefit in Canada called the Guaranteed Income Supplement, or GIS. It's designed for lower income seniors, and it can pay over $1,100 per month tax-free on top of OAS. For a single senior with very little other income, the combined OAS and GIS could be close to $1,850 per month from the federal government alone. Here's the trap. You cannot receive GIS unless you are actively receiving OAS. The two are directly linked. If you choose to delay your OAS to age 70, you don't just delay GIS. You lose it entirely for every month you wait. Let me show you what that means in real numbers. Think about a man named Harold. He's 65, retired, and his income is low enough that he qualifies for the full GIS. If he takes OAS and GIS starting at 65, he receives roughly $1,850 per month from the federal government over those 5 years before age 70. That's more than $111,000 in total tax-free income that he would simply give up if he delayed OAS in search of the 36% bonus. Even if Harold lives to age 100, the extra $267 per month from the deferred OAS premium would never come close to recovering that $111,000 he walked away from. The math doesn't work. It never works for low-income seniors in this situation. So if you currently receive GIS or you expect to qualify for GIS when you retire, you should almost certainly take your OAS at age 65. Do not let anyone tell you that waiting is always the smarter move, because for you, it isn't. By the way, if you're finding these retirement updates helpful and want to keep up with OAS changes, CPP updates, GIS adjustments, and other information that matters to Canadian seniors, consider subscribing to Canadian Retirement Benefits. We focus specifically on the kind of practical, clear information that helps people make better decisions about their retirement income. Now, on the other end of the income spectrum, there's a completely different problem that higher income retirees face, and it's called the OAS clawback. Here's how it works. If your net income in a given year goes above a certain threshold, the government begins taking back a portion of your OAS. In 2026, the clawback starts once your individual net income exceeds about $95,300. For every dollar you earn above that amount, you repay 15 cents of your OAS. If your income is high enough, your entire OAS benefit gets clawed back, and you effectively receive nothing, even though you paid into the system your whole working life. Now, you might think, I'll just keep my income below that level. But here's where it gets complicated. Many retirees don't realize how many sources of income push them over that threshold. There's CPP, there's any workplace pension, there's investment income, and if you have a large registered retirement savings plan, or RRSP, things get even more complex. The government requires you to convert your RRSP into a RRIF. By the end of the year, you turn 71. Once you do that, you're required to withdraw a minimum amount every year, and that amount gets added to your taxable income whether you want it or not. For retirees who spent decades building up a substantial RRSP, those mandatory withdrawals can push income well above the clawback threshold, resulting in the loss of thousands of dollars in OAS benefits. But there's a strategy that addresses this directly, and it involves a very specific sequence of withdrawals before age 70. Think about a couple, Robert and Susan. Robert has an RRSP worth about $800,000. He retires at 62. His income in those early retirement years is relatively low because he's no longer working. That's actually a valuable window. What some retirees do, and what retirement strategists recommend for people in this position, is to intentionally withdraw from their RRSP during those low-income years before age 72, before the mandatory minimums kick in, and before OAS and CPP turn on. By pulling money out of the RRSP gradually and paying tax on it at a lower rate, they shrink the account. A smaller RRSP means smaller mandatory RRIF withdrawals later. Smaller mandatory withdrawals mean lower income in their 70s and 80s. Lower income means staying under the OAS clawback threshold, which means keeping every dollar of that enhanced OAS they deferred to age 70. Meanwhile, they can use tax-free savings account withdrawals to fund their living expenses in those years because TFSA withdrawals don't count as income for any government benefit calculation. This kind of coordinated approach, managing registered accounts, using TFSAs as a bridge, and timing OAS carefully is the difference between a retirement plan that just works and one that actively protects your income for decades. Now, let me tie this all together because I know this has been a lot of information, and I want to make sure you leave this video with something practical. There are essentially 3 different retirement situations when it comes to OAS timing. If you have lower income in retirement, qualify for GIS, have modest savings, or face health concerns that suggest a shorter lifespan, taking OAS at 65 is almost always the right call. Your immediate cash flow matters. GIS eligibility matters. The break-even math doesn't work in your favor if you delay. If you're somewhere in the middle with income that hovers near that clawback threshold, moderate savings, and average health, you're in the zone where careful planning makes the biggest difference. This is where pension income splitting with your spouse, strategic TFSA use, and annual tax bracket reviews can protect your OAS and extend your income for years longer than you might expect. And if you have strong health, significant registered savings, high income, or a large RRSP that could create a clawback problem down the road, deferring OAS to age 70 paired with a deliberate strategy of drawing down your RRSP early can create a retirement income structure that is genuinely hard to beat. A permanently higher, inflation-indexed, government-guaranteed monthly payment that grows even further at age 75, backed by a smaller registered account that stays below the clawback limit. So let me leave you with the most important thing I want you to remember from this video. The question of when to take OAS is not a simple one, and the answer that works for your neighbor may be completely wrong for you. What matters is understanding the factors that apply to your specific situation, your health, your income, your registered account balances, whether you qualify for GIS, whether your income might trigger the clawback. The government never sits down with you and runs these numbers. They don't send you a letter explaining the GIS trap. They don't warn you that a large RRSP could quietly erode your OAS in your 70s. That's exactly why it's worth taking the time to understand this now while there's still time to plan. If you found this helpful and want to keep up with OAS updates, CPP changes, GIS thresholds, and other retirement income information designed specifically for Canadian seniors, subscribe to Canadian Retirement Benefits. We're here to help you make the most of the income you've earned. Thank you for watching, and take good care of yourself.